Hello and welcome to Galatta Plus. In this video review episode, we're going to be talking about Dijo Antony's Pallichattambi. The film is an interesting story that ends up a generic mass movie. Tovino plays a savior. The special guest star plays the villain. The story is set in the 1950s when communism rose to the top in Kerala. The early portions have a mythical appeal, but the superficial writing ensures that the film slowly becomes very generic. That's the short take. A longer review follows and it may contain spoilers.
வீடுதோறும் அரசு சேவைகள் மருத்துவம் தொடர்ந்திட ஸ்டாலின் தொடரட்டும் தமிழ்நாடு வெல்லட்டும் டார்லிங் ஏசி திருவிழா இந்தியாவிலே குறைந்த மாத தவணையில் ஏசி
ரகங்கள் பலவிதம் ஒவ்வொன்றும் உலகத்தரம் தமிழக உற்பத்தியில் உங்கள் அனுஜ் ஸ்டைல்ஸ்.
Dijo Antony likes to make big, loud films filled with rhetoric, and the first half of Pallichattambi, set in the 1950s, suggests that he has found a story that suits his style. The issue is that of land reforms and equality, and the flavor is that of myth. When the fearsome landowner named Patelar Kunyavu makes his appearance, his workers are terrified. An elephant in the vicinity goes mad and brings its foot down on a young man's head. In the holy books of almost all religions, whenever there is someone so evil, a savior is born. And so we see a child being plucked from the arms of a dead mother. It's almost like a divine birth or a miracle. The child, who grows up to be Tovino is named Krishna, and it is an apt name for someone who will stand up to Patelar Kunyavu, who is this film's equivalent of Kamsa. This villain is played by a special guest star, and I think everyone knows who he is by now. And now we turn to another religion. When a communist government is formed in Kerala, the church is terrified. They think that their lands will be taken away. The story focuses on the village of Kaniyar set in the hills, and the priest declares that communism is the enemy of God. These Christians want to protect themselves, and they seek a strong man who can build an army. How a Hindu named Krishna becomes the similar sounding Christopher, and how he fulfills his role of the savior forms the rest of this movie, which includes a second villain named Rairu. This man, played by Shatru, is introduced as the mastermind behind the Great Rebellion during partition. To emphasize the mythical nature of the movie, we have a Yakshaganam performance featuring Ravana. This village is in the Kerala-Karnataka border, hence the Yakshaganam. And to emphasize the intermingling of religions, we have a little Christian girl wondering why Rama had to resort to hiding in order to kill Vali. The groundwork is laid for a solid mass movie, and Tovino is in solid form as a soft mass hero who cries easily. He weeps for the past, he weeps for the condition of people in the present. His big frame makes it easy to think of him as a savior who will protect you, even as the kindness and compassion written all over his face makes it easy to invest in this man as someone who will do what is right. At first, Krishna is brought in to eradicate the threat of communism, but things begin to change when he meets the biblically named Rebecca, played by Kayadu Lohar. She is a communist, and she gives him a copy of the Communist Manifesto. The color red is applied to her even before we see this character, who is a stage actress. A crude man who catches a glimpse of this beautiful woman refers to her as Nalla Chuvanna Alva Katti. What happens to Rebecca is one of the more interesting plot points, or one of the more interesting aspects of Pallichattambi. But after a reasonably strong first half, the film quickly loses steam. The pre-interval portions are pretty generic, but there is a basic cleanness in the writing, in the way one thing leads to another. But slowly, the generic storytelling leads to a generic mass movie with all the specific points about myth, about communism. These things don't really matter in the larger scheme of things. We needed more specificity in the relationship between Krishna and Rebecca. Otherwise, they are just a good-looking couple who get a good duet. We needed more specificity in the relationship between Krishna and the army that he builds, which includes Dalits. Otherwise, they are just random extras whose life and death do not register. We needed more specificity in the relationship between the two villains and the rest of the story. Otherwise, the plot point about the hill filled with ghosts, that's just a gimmick. Jake's Bijoy keeps pumping in energy through the music, but what Pallichattambi really needed is more finesse in the writing by S. Suresh Babu. Finally, we are left with the usual mass fights and the usual audience-grabbing tricks like cutting to little girls or pregnant women to amplify the drama. Rebecca says that she wants to build a school. That in itself is a plot line that reflects the bigger issue of private property versus property being put to public use. The writer Richard Price once said, "You don't write about the horrors of war, You write about a kid's burnt socks lying in the road. This applies to films too. When you focus on the smaller details, the bigger picture takes care of itself. The supporting cast includes Vijay Raghavan, Siddiq, Babu Raj, and even a certain Chandy from Puthupalli, but none of them really register due to the broad strokes of the storytelling, which often resorts to fiery but familiar dialogues like the one that says, "Riots will happen as long as we are divided by class and caste." In the end, Pallichattambi ends up a series of interesting plot points in search of a cohesive and affecting movie. That's it about Pallichattambi. If you like this video review, do subscribe to Galatta Plus and see you soon at the movies.
வீடுதோறும் அரசு சேவைகள். மருத்துவம் தொடர்ந்திட ஸ்டாலின் தொடரட்டும், தமிழ்நாடு வெல்லட்டும். டார்லிங் ஏசி திருவிழா, இந்தியாவிலே குறைந்த மாத தவணையில் ஏசி.
ரகங்கள் பலவிதம், ஒவ்வொன்றும் உலகத்தரம். தமிழக உற்பத்தியில் உங்கள் அனுஜ் டைல்ஸ்.